I think as I've reflected over the last year or so on this, I think one of the issues that I'm seeing more and more is how do we define what a pioneer is? Often in our literature we use this word pioneer, but we don't really define it very clearly what it is. One of the things that fascinates me is that the only person in the New Testament who's described as a pioneer is Jesus. And it's made me reflect on what is it about the nature of Jesus that is pioneering, and how might that impact the way that we do pioneering, and the conventions and the boundaries that Jesus broke, but also how he worked within a kind of mixed economy as well, as someone who came to fulfill the law, and how as pioneers do we do that. But I do think that we need to take seriously that nature of the New Testament view of pioneers, of being the first and of breaking boundaries, and that we really need to ensure that we free our pioneers to do that. I think one of the dangers is, as Johnny Baker's called it, we end up with this kind of priest plus model where they have to do all the other things that everyone else does, and with the small amount of time left, they can do pioneering. And what I would love to see is more and more the church setting people free, lay and ordained, to fulfill their pioneering as part of teams, not just on their own as mavericks, but giving them that permission and that ability and the resources to do that fully. And that we almost end up with a kind of pioneering ministry alongside a mixed economy ministry. But we really do free pioneers to pioneer, and not to give them other things to do alongside that. I think it's interesting here with the students who are ordained pioneer trainees. One of their comments often to me is that they would like to spend more time doing the pioneering part of their training. And I think that is just symptomatic of the need to set free pioneers to do pioneering, and not to leave them to do lots of other things, but recognising these specific gifts and saying to people, actually, here is the space and the time and the resources to do that. And I think linked to that is we're going to have to be more creative about the resources that we create to enable people to do this. And I think we need to think probably a lot more about how we specifically do that, to free up pioneers to truly pioneer and to fulfill their calling. I think the denominations probably need to be clearer about exactly what a pioneer is, and I think secondly they need to set free pioneers to be pioneering, and to give them that responsibility to do pioneering things unencumbered by all the other parts that often pioneers are given, so that often they end up with a kind of shared role. And I think for many pioneers they just need to be set free with encouragement, with support, with accountability as part of a team. But they must be set free to do what God is calling them to do, with the support and encouragement, hopefully, of our denominations. I think that if you're breaking boundaries, if you're going into new areas, whatever that might mean, I think that there is going to be part of that is isolating, and I think that's the really important thing of being part of a team, and that's why so often pioneers don't want to just do this on their own, but one of the most important things is building a team around them, because the work by its very nature can be isolating. I think where it does differ is that often pioneers feel within the system, whatever that might be in their denomination, misunderstood, and they always feel that they're having to explain themselves. And I think that can often add to that sense of isolation. And that's why often they enjoy coming together, because as they classically would say to me, oh, I can come to this place and we don't need to explain ourselves. So I think there is a right sense of isolation, which is part of being a pioneer, and that's why teams are important. But also there is that sense of how do we support and encourage them in a place where at times they don't feel very much at home. I think Breakout, which is the kind of National Pioneers Conference, arose really from that whole thing that I kept meeting pioneers who felt very isolated, and they may be the only pioneer in their circuit or their area or their diocese, and they didn't even know if there were other pioneers around, and so we began this yearly conference to bring these people together to a place where they didn't have to explain themselves, where they could find support and encouragement and resources and learn from other people and learn from each other. And we call it a gathering, actually. We don't call it a conference because it has very much that sense of gathering together to be encouraged and fed and developed to then go back out to the work that pioneers are called to do. I think one of the natures of pioneers is that they are really good relational networkers. So I see suddenly lots of things happening, and I think we just need to make sure that that all areas are covered. It is interesting that in some ways there are lots of things going on, and then I spoke the other day to some pioneers in Newcastle who didn't know anyone else or anything else about pioneering, and were amazed to discover there was a national conference and there was such a thing as MSM and all that kind of thing. So I think it's easy sometimes to think that, oh, everyone's networked and everyone knows people and knows resources, and I think we just need to make sure that we've got good coverage. And that we are providing across the country really good support and resourcing and encouraging for pioneers.